I remember I read that Jörn V. Knudstorp, he said the most inspiring book he ever read was The Opposable Mind. And it made me read the book, and I must admit I agree. I always wanted to bring Roger to Copenhagen, and I've been pleading and begging with him for years, and finally he said, okay, I'm meeting Jörn V. Knudstorp, I think was it today? And I'll come by afterwards. So he told me that more than a year ago. And I said, I'll come Monday at 7 p.m. And I said, thank you. Yes, please. So this is why he's here with us tonight. So I'm sure a lot of you know Roger Martin's work from, amongst others, Playing to Win. I know a lot of big Danish companies use it as their go-to strategy Bible. But this is his new book, Creating Great Choices, he's going to talk about tonight. To let you in on, for those of you who do not know Roger, he was recently named the world's leading and most influential business thinker by the distinguished list, the Thinkers 50 list. And it was because of many of the books, but especially the book he's going to talk about today. So we're in great company. Roger Martin, let me just give you a brief bio. He serves as the Institute Director of the Martin Prosperity Institute at the Rutman School of Management in Toronto. And from 1998 to 2013, he served as the Dean of that school. And he was so successful that he was actually, in his last year, he was awarded, he was named the Global Dean of the Year by a leading business school website. He's published 11 books, that's quite a lot, and he is about to write his, the number 20, the 25th article with Harvard Business Review? 26th, I stand corrected, so we do look forward to that one as well. So he's a trusted advisor as well for global companies, CEOs of global companies like Procter & Gamble, Lego, and Verizon. And he's a Canadian from Ontario. He received his undergraduate degree from Harvard College with a concentration in economics and an MBA from Harvard Business School. He is here with us tonight to talk about his latest book, Creating Great Choices, all the way from Fort Lauderdale in Florida. Please give a warm Copenhagen welcome to Roger Martin.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. It is a warm welcome. I love being here in Copenhagen. My wife is half Danish, so it feels like coming home to each of us. So I wanted to just give a little bit of an introduction to the book, and then we can have an on-stage conversation and answer your questions. But this book is called Creating Great Choices, and I thought I'd give you, just for fun, a little bit of the background to this. So this book arose out of a 1991 question that I asked myself and asked with a couple of my colleagues at Monitor Company. And so we were a consulting firm created in 1983-84 that was made up of kids. As of 1991, all of the partners were in their early 30s, and most of the employees were in their 20s. And I asked the question, why do CEOs of really large companies, like Procter & Gamble, which had been a client of mine for about 6 years by that time, why do they hire tiny Monitor company filled with 20 to 30-year-olds? So that was actually the motivating question. I was like, what is it about the kind of things they ask us about that would make them say, let's hire these guys instead of a bigger, more established firm, like McKinsey, BCG, Bain, really big firms that arguably were more credible than we were at the time. So I went off and started asking the question, how do the leaders of successful companies think? Because I wanted to know how that mapped against the kind of things that they were asking us to do. So I interviewed people like Jack Welch and Michael Dell and Izzy Sharp of Four Seasons and social entrepreneurs like Teddy Bletcher and Victoria Hale, and came up with the original book in 2007, which was called The Opposable Mind. And I'll talk in a minute about what I discovered in that, and then since that time, we've been practicing and teaching and learning and revising and practicing and teaching and learning about how how to do this thing with all sorts of folks, which resulted in the new book, Creating Great Choices, which took what I discovered in 2007 and made it more actionable. I had the great fortune, and Kurt probably, I don't know if you edited an article of it. Chris Argyris was a Harvard Business School professor who passed away a couple of years ago, but was a mentor to me, and he always said, Roger, knowledge upon which you cannot take action is barely worth having at all. And so by Chris's standards, I thought The Opposable Mind was really interesting. But it wasn't until Creating Great Choices that I think we achieved a standard of actionability that Chris hopefully would approve of. So what did I come up with as I tried to understand how highly successful leaders thought, spurred by the question, what sorts of questions did they ask us? And as I say, I did 15 years of work between 1991 and when I wrote The Opposable Mind. And you'd like to believe that in those 15 years you'd find out something new. But I didn't. Sadly, I found out something old. It was kind of depressing, but sometimes life is tough. And what I found is that this was the characteristic that highly successful leaders exhibited. And it was something that F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote about in 1948, the great American novelist. You could say that Hegel thought about 200 years earlier, and Kant thought about 200 more years earlier than that. But he said the test of a first-rate intelligence, ability to hold two opposing ideas in mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. Which I love as a quote, and I didn't even discover the next line until I actually went to the source material to reread it and got this: one should, for example, be able to see that things are hopeless, yet be determined to make them otherwise. How that's related to that original question is that's what executives hired us for, as it turned out. If there was a view that they had, but they wanted to be sure they were right, if this had been done many times before, they hired somebody else. And if they were in this situation, they hired Monitor. That's the conclusion that I came to, because somehow or another, that's something that they thought we could do for them. So that was the original thought. So now, the only thing I disagree, by the way, with F. Scott Fitzgerald, though I can't disagree with him because he's dead, but the only thing I disagree with him is I've come to believe that this can be taught. And in fact, we're busily practicing teaching this to as young kids as 5-year-olds. We haven't gotten younger than that, but you can teach a 5-year-old to do exactly this. Exactly this. And interestingly enough, what we found is you can teach a 5-year-old to do it more easily than you can teach an MBA to do it. Why? It's because by the time they get to be an MBA, an adult, they believe you can't and shouldn't do this. And of course, 5-year-olds don't believe much of anything, other than if you give them a playful task to do, they will do it. And if the playful task is holding two opposing ideas in your mind at the same time and coming up with a better answer, they're like all in. So I don't agree that it's a sign of intelligence. It's a sign of developing your mind, which begs the question, if this is so damn important, so if you just take on faith for a moment, that I found something that was more important than not, let's just go with that for a second, it does beg the question, why doesn't everybody do this all the time? And the reason has to do, I've come to believe, the reason has to do with how we observe and model the world, right? So what we do, the mind, and I was going to say human mind, but it's actually animals do this too. The mind works in the following way. It observes the thing on the left and creates a model of it, the thing on the right. Right? It does this all the time, right? And they are very sticky, right? So this may look like a mess, but if I draw a few lines, it no longer looks like a mess. And can you unsee the dog? No, you can't. You can't unsee the dog anymore. You can't make your mind not see that as a dog. And it's because we automatically model everything. We will say things like, the reality is, the truth of the matter is, right? Those are things we say all the time. And it's almost never anything close to the truth or the reality. It's just our model of it, right? And as John Sterman, who's one of my favorite guys, he's the MIT professor, system dynamics professor, and he's the student of Jay Forster, the guy who kind of invented the concept of system dynamics, says it so eloquently. I put his whole quote here, which is, this modeling process is happening unconsciously. You're not aware of it. Important. It's happening without your knowledge. It's happening without your consent, and you can't turn it off. So telling somebody to not model is an impossibility. You are always operating on the basis of a model. You never have a choice of let's model or not. It's only a question of which model. And most of the time, the models that you're operating from are ones you're not even aware you're using. So this is what human beings do as a matter of course. And it's not just human beings. So think about it. There's a deer wandering around in the woods, and he sees somebody over there in an orange jacket and has a long cylindrical object in their hands. What does the deer do? Model. And what's the model? What's the model? That's a hunter, and it's going to shoot me. Therefore, run. I mean, it's a model. So we can't stop deer from modeling. Now, some smart aleck told me once, Roger, they don't see in colors, so it's not an orange jacket. But I think the point is made anyway. So we model all the time, and they're helpful. There's a reason. And now, this work was done long before a bunch of the behavioral science work was done. But of course, they are heuristics that allow us to operate in the world without having to kind of think too much. We can model, but they present challenges. They're almost impossible to escape as we adopt them unconsciously. And the key point, though, the most central key point is this, which is that because we're all modeling, right, models clash naturally. Two people looking at the same thing will not think the same thing in any automatic way. We think they will, right? So if we're looking at something that's the same as somebody else is looking at, and we say, it looks like X, and the other person says, it looks like Y, what do we immediately think about the other person? What? They're wrong, right? And what's our explanation of their wrongness? We have two main explanations of their wrongness. Any guesses?
I'm right.
Yes, well, I'm right, but what would explain why they're wrong? What would explain why they don't think right just like us?
Stupidity.
Stupid, yeah, right? They're kind of clueless, they don't get it. We say all sorts of nice ways of saying it. Oh, they just haven't studied it enough. It's all stupid. Or what? There's another perfectly plausible, oh, thank you. Another perfectly plausible explanation.
Women?
No, a good try, but let's try again. Yes. Yeah, but why would they have another model?
Bias.
Yes. Generally in the entire broad category of evil, right? So they know what the right answer is, but they've got some hidden agenda that causes them to think about it differently. So people just literally, it's only two categories, stupid or evil, right? So because models naturally clash, but because we don't think we're modeling, we have an explanation, which is that the other person is stupid or evil. The world has developed these two techniques for dealing with model clash. They're the most kind of used techniques by far. It's either what I call the sort of political model. So it's the fear and avoid, right? You either deny, ignore, or avoid the clash as much as you can, but when faced with it, you realize you've got to either crush the opposing model or cave into it. And so you either do that to reconfirm that you get back to this world of there's no model clash. Do we kind of recognize this in the world of, say, while we're at it, American politics? Right? It's full of what kind of people? Go according to each side, right? Stupid or evil people, right? The other way, so there you duke it out to see who wins and who can amass the greatest support so that you win against the stupid or evil people who just are wrong. Or there's a sort of a technocratic approach to it, right? Which is you lay out a set of options and you evaluate them against some rubric and choose the least worst option from the set of options. And where's the battle go on here? It's the rubric, right? Because it's the decision-making criteria that's going to tell you which is going to be the best model. So there you argue over the decision-making standard. Here you try and amass enough people on your side to crush the other side. So I asked the question, what is the value of diversity of models given this treatment of models? What's the value? It's like zero, right? It's just an annoyance. You don't get anything out of it. All you get is actually hurt feelings and wasted time. It takes a while to crush the other model, or it's annoying to be crushed by the other model. Here you got to go through some convoluted decision-making process that makes nobody happy, right? This is why, for what it's worth, diversity in the organizational world is a mixed blessing. Right? Diversity should be the best thing a corporation can or organization of any sort could have. It should be, and could be, if people understood integrative thinking. It both should and could be, because you take advantage of the diversity of models to build better ones. But if you have no technique for doing that, diversity is just a time waster. Right? That's why there are as many mixed views on it as there are. Because we don't systematically have a way of dealing productively with the diversity of models. It's one of my goals in life, is to teach how to do that so that we get all the benefits of diversity, so that we have more diverse organizations that will be better, that will produce systematically better decisions, et cetera, et cetera. But it doesn't just happen on its own because of the automaticity of modeling, rather than the contemplation that we are model. And when I did my original research, where I interviewed for sometimes as much as an entire day long on tape, highly successful leaders, this is what I found was the only consistent thing about them, literally. There was nothing else, personality type, background, skill set, were they confident, nothing, except they all did this thing. They did not fear clashing models, try to avoid clashing models. They sought out clashing models. They enjoyed the tension, right? Rather than saying, oh my God, this is painful. And of course it's painful if you think the other person is stupid or evil, and dealing with a stupid or evil person is kind of difficult. And so it's a pain. No, they thought, oh, this is awesome. This is awesome. We're going to make a better decision. And they drove for a new insight. None of the existing models were ever satisfactory. They wanted tension to produce a better one. So that's the heart of integrative thinking. And an example of this would be my friend A.G. Lafley when he took over as CEO of P&G in 2000. They were in financial trouble. They just missed two kind of big earnings. Their earnings had fallen. They'd missed guidance twice. Crisis. The previous guy had upped innovation spending like crazy, and that had tanked profitability because the previous guy thought they needed more innovation. And so he had one side saying, cut innovation spend to improve short-term financials and sacrifice a little bit of long-term growth. Another one said, invest in R&D, industry-leading levels, because it's coming, it's coming. It just hasn't arrived yet, it's coming. That's a classic either-or choice. Those are two models. And guess what the people on the left thought about the people on the right? Crazy dreamers, not evil, stupid, right? What do you think the people on the right thought of the people on the left? Evil, right? Short-term oriented evil people who don't really care about the beauty of innovation for the long term, right? So there's where you're stuck. What made AG a great CEO and successful CEO is he said, no, not going there, not doing that, and came up with the creative resolution, which was connect and develop, where he said, well, you know what? Innovation and spending aren't just sort of one-to-one correlated. There's kind of two parts of innovation. One would be invention. And man, if you look at the stats, the efficiency of big corporations in invention, there's no economies of scale, if anything, diseconomies of scale. Little individuals, single person, woman or man at the bench in a lab, they actually do better than big corporations at that. But commercialization, hoo-ha, there are massive economies of scale. It's really hard to get 100% retail distribution across the world with a new product. For us, it's actually easy. For P&G, we know all those people. We can say, here's another thing, and they'll put it on their shelves. So why don't we do this? Why don't we source 50% of our inventions from the outside, or we can get them cheap, because we can pay them more than the NPV is to them, because we can get distribution for it, and then we will put it through our commercialization pipeline, and we will outdo everybody else in innovation. That's integrative thinking, right? And what he said, when I interviewed him, he said, we weren't going to win if it was an or. I love this. Everybody can do or. That's pretty easy, right? You just calculate the NPV with some stupid assumptions and say, ta-da, I'm going to do B. That's the way the world works. You trade things off, but you're not going to be the best in your industry. You're not going to win if you're in a trade-off game. Or my friend, Jan Vig, my and Marie-Louise's friend, Jan Vig, on the Lego movie. Two models, right? One model is, this is called the Lego movie. It's about our company, our brand, our venerated brand. We better have final artistic control to avoid any possibility of deprecation of the brand, right? The other model is, you're going to make a dreadful movie that nobody's going to watch if corporate types are in control of it. The only way to get a great movie is to give artistic control to Hollywood so that you can get the best director producers for your movie. Either or choice. Right? What did Jan Vig do? It wasn't easy. It was not easy to do it. He said, well, you know what? We're not going to do it. We've done this before. We've done boring movies. The Adventures of Clutch Powers. Have anybody seen that direct-to-DVD movie? No. Lego movie. How many people? Lego movie. Not everybody? Oh my God. It's the best movie. Best movie going. So he said, we're not going to do that again. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to give final artistic control to Phil Lord and Chris Miller, a fabulously successful Hollywood director-producer team. But we're going to insist that they spend a goodly amount of time with Lego fanatics, kids and adults. And if they do that, they will be incapable of doing anything to hurt the brand. And during this whole process, we're not going to be staring over their shoulders saying, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? We're going to bury them with love and affection. We're just going to be flat out nice to them all the time. But they have one requirement. You spend this amount of time with Lego fans and fiends. And what did he get out of that? Just a crazy smash hit movie that's now set off a multi-billion-dollar empire of Lego movie after Lego movie, all of which are successful, which would have never happened had he done the either-or choice. So integrative thinking, what I said is the ability to face constructively the tension of opposing models, and instead of choosing one at the expense of the other, to generate a creative resolution of the tension in the form of a new model that contains elements of the individual models but is superior to each. Now, the thing that you could have knocked me over with a feather on is this, in the form of a new model that contains elements of the individual models but is superior to each. I was stunned. So all the people I interviewed for the book and everybody since has not created a breakthrough idea with what tool? What tool do we say you need to use to create a new idea? Right? A blank sheet of paper. I can understand why the theory is that. It sounds good, right? You're going to be unconstrained and anything is game. It's a cool idea that doesn't happen, or at least I can't find it. I literally can't. All the innovations contain elements of the individual models. So I change completely the way I try to innovate and do anything new. I never start with a blank sheet of paper. I start with the existing models and say, what can we learn from the conflicts between them? So it's to take a different perspective. This is a great Alfred Sloan, the builder of General Motors. He said this coming out of a meeting as quoted by Peter Drucker, who worked a lot with him, who's my hero. If we're all in agreement on the decision, then I propose we postpone further discussion of this matter until our next meeting to give us time to develop disagreement and perhaps gain some understanding of what the decision is all about. Isn't that cool? This like makes me happy whenever I read it. What was he? An integrative thinker, right? Profoundly uncomfortable with quick agreement. Interestingly enough, A.G. Lafley is exactly the same. I've seen him in person do that, to say, yeah, let's not decide. And everybody's like, we all agree. He said, yeah, who is this ever dangerous? Right? Because he wants to get some other idea in the mix that'll make that idea better. A different objective, rather than trading off, going along the trade-off line between A and B, so that what do you end up with? Consensus. Why does everybody hate the word consensus? It's because it's that. It's neither and nothing better. You want to be aiming for what you really need, something that's better than on the trade-off line between A and B. And a different outcome, rather than saying, and this is I won't go through it, an example in the book about, are you aiming to make a building livable or efficient? And these architects created the award-winning structure in North America of the year by saying, you know what, how about livable and efficient? And created a way of doing that. So that's the perspective. And this is the model we talk about in the book. So the frustration for me from 2007 to 2017 was not being actionable enough to say, how do you look for that? Everything I've said thus far sounds pretty good, right? Like, you'd want one of those. Right? But how do you get one of those things? I do not want to be in the business of saying, the proper stock investment strategy is you buy stocks that are low now that are going to be high later. Right? I could be Tony Robbins and make lots of money saying things like that. But no, I need to give a methodology for doing the thing that I would like you to do. So it's these 4 steps, which I'll just run through with some quick examples, and then we'll then we'll talk. Articulate the models, examine them, explore possibilities, and assess the prototypes. So articulate the models. Here's the thing we discovered. We discovered that the best thing you can do when you're considering opposing models is push them to extreme. Don't start out in the compromise mode. Push them to the extreme. So if you're saying, oh, should we centralize the training function at corporate or decentralize to all the regions? Don't say, should we make it mainly corporate or kind of mainly regional? Bad way to start. Even if you think those are sensible alternatives, go for non-sensible ones. Say, we will wipe out any and every training effort or person in the regions and do 100% of it at corporate, or we will disband the corporate training function and say, the regions, you do it all on your own. It turns out you improve your chances of getting an integrative solution by pushing it to extreme because you get more raw materials in those models. And then you've got to do this thing that's a very hard thing to do, which is sequentially fall in love with the models. Right? Act as if one doesn't exist. The only love of your life is the other model. And spend your time figuring out who are the players involved in this model, and I'll show a little bit of that, and identify how this model is awesome for them, works and delivers fantastic results. And then have a little amnesia, forget that that model actually exists, and go over and do the same thing for the others. It's something we rarely do. You have to actually, this is something that you do actually have to practice to be able to do. Because we can't help but be toggling back and forth. Pluses and minuses. And by the way, pluses and minuses are a bad idea in evaluating models if you're trying to build a new one. You just think about all the great things, what you love about each model. That's the raw materials for building something better when you think about it, right? We're doing this with the kids, and it's out of the mouths of babes. It's so awesome. Out of the mouths of babes, this like 8-year-old girl says, teacher used to tell us we should do pro-con charts. This is a pro-pro chart, right? And we're like, now we use that in everything we do with the corporate executive and everything. So then examine them, hold them in tension, and ask what's similar and different. What do you love about each model? What are the tensions and assumptions in the relationships? And remind yourself, what problem am I trying to solve in this? And so here's just an example. This is with one of the world's biggest retailers. And they were asking the question about data and use of customer data. And the question was, do we use identifiable customer data, right? So customers can be targeted because we identify them, or do we anonymize it and just say, well, this is how customers of this sort of kind of set thing. Right? And so you lay out both models and ask, how do they work? Personalization to fit better needs, trust, where your privacy is protected. And you ask yourself, what do you care about? What really actually matters? It's not the whole model. We hang everything on the whole model and say, well, this is the whole model. And I have to think, no. Think about what you absolutely love. So your trust, I feel that the company is treating my data carefully and taking care of my needs. Ease, I can tailor my trips best based on the information. Relevant advertising and offers. Those are the things we love. There are some things that are different, right? But some are similar, right? So decompose the models after you've fallen in love with them and figure out how they work. And here, the solution came out. It's always sounds simple after the fact is, how's about asking the customer how they want their data used? You don't actually have to decide this for them. We're going to either anonymize or use identifiable data and try and weasel our way to tricking you, like Facebook, into using your data and then having them mad at you. Just say, what do you want us to do? And you can ask them all the time. We got this idea that we'd like to send your way. Do you want us to send it your way or not? And that's what they're doing. There's no trade-off. So you have fantastic trust and identifiable data that the person actually cares about somebody using to give them better offers. You couldn't have gotten there without falling in love with both models rather than arguing with yourself about both models, doing pro-cons. It's pro-pros. This is how they work. Let's figure out how to make them work better. So 3 is to generate possibilities, which I just went into, but generate possibilities. And here we found that there's only 3 ways that we've been able to discover that people actually create integrative solutions. That was the fun part. That's what 10 years kind of can sometimes do. Like, remember, the first 15 years I found nothing. It's too bad. The last 10 we found, oh, this is interesting. They come in 3 flavors: a double down, hidden gem, and decomposition. And so I'll just, in the interest of time, I'll just talk about each of them and give an example. So in a double down, the mechanism is you expand one model in such a way to grab the important element of the other model that you want. So when you're in a situation where you kind of like most of one model, but it's missing something you kind of lust after about the other model, how can you, under what conditions could you expand it to make that model fit? And the example here is, and so this is sort of what you do. You have a problem. I have a problem. There are 2 models. I like most of one and a bit of 2. How do you, what clever way can you get that bit of 2? So the example here is the Toronto International Film Festival, which in 1996 was the 3rd best film festival in Canada. Really? So it was inconsequential and irrelevant in global terms, right? And just barely relevant in Canada. Now it is by far and away the most powerful film festival in the world. It's eclipsed Cannes in terms of the participation. The movie deals done there, and it ain't even close. And the difference is getting greater How on earth did that happen? Well, there were 2 models. There was the Community Film Festival, where it's based in the community, it's relatively open, anybody can go. Berlin would be an example of that. Toronto International Film Festival was, Tribeca was. And the good news there is that it was open, and people could come. The community loved it. The community would support it. But it didn't have much buzz because you had no jury and had no prize. And so there wasn't international attention on who's going to win the prize. And you had hundreds and hundreds of films. There's another model exemplified by Cannes, which was at the time by far and away the dominant film festival in the world and wasn't even close. There are only 15 to 20 films a year. Intensive jurying to get to be able to show at Cannes. You can't, like normal human beings like you guys, cannot, like and me, cannot get to Cannes because it's only for industry insiders. You're invited to Cannes. You can't show up now. You can show up outside the velvet ropes and see if you can see Brad and Angelina fighting. But that's the model. And they have a jury of superstars, Quentin Tarantino and some starlets, who decide who's going to win the what. Palme d'Or, the big prize, the international media is there, so you get massive sponsorships from people who want to throw money at being part of that. But it's exclusionary, whatever. So what does Piers Handling, the head of the Toronto International Film Festival, say? He fell in love with both models, and he did that very explicitly. What do I love about the Toronto model? All the inclusivity, et cetera. I love that. Many films, you see new kind of directors, new people make their careers at it potentially. I love. But I would love to have the sponsorship that goes with Cannes so that we are not hand to mouth every year. So do you do that by making it less inclusive? No, you double down on inclusivity. So if you're Toronto, what advantage do you have over Sundance, which was another in this model? Well, you're a big international city, and you happen to be the most diverse international city on the face of the planet, actually, by most measures. 50% of Toronto area citizens have got a foreign passport, for example. So what's useful about that audience? And you got to buy a ticket. What's useful about that audience? Might give you an indication of how your film is going to do globally when it actually opens. Because unlike Cannes, they have to pay for their ticket. And unlike Cannes, it is incredibly diverse and representative of the world economy. So you say, how about this? We're not going to have a jury, but we're going to have a prize. And what do you think the prize is at the Toronto International Film Festival? Yeah, the People's Choice Award, the audience prize. If you go to the Toronto International Film Festival, you get a ballot. You get to vote on the movie you like. And that, the winner of the TIFF award, is now almost automatically the lead Academy Award favorite. It's now become the place you've got to go to get the buzz for your movie. And was that sacrificing inclusiveness? No. It feels more inclusive. It's like we, not some bunch of elitists, get to determine what's a great movie by participating. That's a double down. So he sacrificed nothing about the Cannes model, got everything he wanted from the Cannes model while perpetuating the model he wanted. Second is a hidden gem, or you throw most of both models away while retaining a nugget from each. So you say, gee, most of these models I don't actually care much about, but I care about the one thing, right? And that's what they did, the retailer did. They said, I care about this thing, and if you throw away everything else in the models, you can create a new model that contains those two. So how could small components of each model be brought together to form the basis of a new answer? We see lots of examples of that. And lastly, decomposition. That is to say, it's completely different. It's to say, I like a whole bunch of Model A and a whole bunch of Model B. I want both. Could I apply Model A to one part of the problem and Model B to another part of the problem? So unlike the others where you keep the problem whole and get the models together, there you say that the answer is to break the problem into two pieces. What did A.G. Lafley do? He said it's not innovation, it's what? Invention and commercialization. And you can apply one model to invention and another model to commercialization to get more innovation for less. So it turns out it's just those three models: double down, hidden gem, and decomposition. And I swear, if you've got conflicting models, directly contrasting models, if you try to look for a double down, a decomposition, and a hidden gem, you'll find one. So problems that appear in Super Bowl, that appear to have opposing answers that are irreconcilable, incommensurable, are not. They are just that way because of the way we model. And we can teach 5-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 15-year-olds. It's harder to teach MBAs, but we can do that too, to do it. And last is be designerly about it. Try it. Don't bet the farm on your new model. Try it, just like Pierce did. Let's try the People's Choice Award. No, it works. Let's make it more important, more central. Let's make it a big deal. Let's tell everybody. Let's connect the statistics about it. It actually only took off absolutely big time in 2000 when a movie that if you just explained the plot and the structure of the movie, people would have said, you have got to be kidding me. So how about this, a Mandarin language movie about warriors, ancient warriors, dancing on the top of treetops? No, that ain't gonna work. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon won the People's Choice Award, went on to do $250 million of global business, and the People's Choice Award became the thing that you needed to do. That is that. I've just, I was 2 minutes extra. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to have a conversation.
Thank you, Roger.